what we're really aiming for, creating these what we call bonding conversations where they can share their vulnerability of what happened to them. And as they share, they become more clear on the message, what they need to feel safe and connected. So the manager said, this is how it made me feel. I felt like I did something wrong. Somehow my raw spot being disapproving and intimidation, right? Because it's a CEO. All of these created fears in me. And I started to worry. I started to worry that, oh my goodness, we're going to be disconnected. We're not on the same page. And it's not okay to ask questions. Wow, I should have this fear of being afraid to ask questions. When he had all these experiences shared with the CEO and asked for what he needed, the CEO was able to be there for him. Experience work interactions in a different and refreshing light. This is the Leader in You podcast, brought to you by EMC Leaders, taking care of the teams you care about and build strong team relationships, as well as the connected culture.
Welcome, everybody, to the Leader in You podcast. We are so excited to be here again, of course. Welcome to the best organizational podcast in the world. Conflict resolution specialist, expert in making a thriving culture, to helping support you create a thriving culture in your organization. Dr. Lola is here. I co-host this amazing podcast with Dr. Lola.
Hi, Polina. It's so nice to be here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast.
And if you are watching or listening for the first time today, we are talking about emotional safety. And EMC Leaders is a company that trains your team how to resolve conflicts through the emotional connection process and how to create an emotionally safe environment, how to create deep bonding relationships so that you can thrive in your workplace environment and actually affect the bottom line by incredibly improving the bottom line. So today podcast, we are talking about emotional safety, and how fitting, because Dr. Lola is launching a new book, and we won't give all the details until after we explain how effective this process is in the workplace, because we have an actual real life experience that we want to share with you today of a situation and conflict that came up in a company that we've been working with. So Dr. Lola, take it away. Tell us what happened in this.
Thank you, Polina. And it is such a common situation that happens all over in all different teams. So this particular team had a meeting, and one of the managers posed a question to the presenter: how did you get these results? Right, this is a very common question that people ask in a meeting.
So it was like an email or a random, or there was a meeting that was
Yeah, there was a
taking
meeting
two
taking place.
people in
No, it
particular.
was a group of people. It was a meeting with a group of people, and one of the managers who was at the meeting asked the presenter, how did you come up with these results?
Okay.
Okay. And it's a very common question, right? And I guess the person was not sure how to respond. And after the meeting, the manager was standing in the kitchen getting some coffee, and the CEO came to him, and he said, like, why did you ask that question? You should have known.
Wait, okay. So the manager asked one of their subordinate,
No,
and
it was another manager who was presenting at a meeting.
the manager, so a coworker,
Yeah,
same
colleague.
level,
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
colleague, he was presenting information on results
Yes.
for a campaign they did or for
No,
sales.
for a company. Yeah, it
Oh,
was for a
for
company. Yeah.
just in general, results about something.
Yes, exactly. On a project.
on a project. And so when the manager asked, the other manager asked the other manager, well, how'd you come up with the results?
Yes.
The manager who was
The
presenting,
CEO got triggered.
but the manager who was presenting didn't have a problem with it or just didn't know how to answer.
He didn't know how to answer. He didn't really respond.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the CEO got triggered probably because he was wondering why the manager was questioning the other manager's validity.
Yeah, because I
Or,
think the whole team got stressed from that question. But
oh,
nobody said
okay.
anything, right? Nobody said anything in that meeting. They
Mm-hmm.
just moved on to another agenda item.
Okay. And so then the meeting ends, the manager goes to the room to get some coffee,
Yes,
and the CEO comes to talk to him about the
yes.
situation.
Yeah, and the CEO says, why did you ask that question? You should have known.
He should have known how he got those results.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
So the manager gets triggered by that question. That
Mm,
the manager gets triggered by the CEO's comment, like you should have known. And so
not
he,
the tone of voice.
by the tone of voice,
Hmm.
by just like he's actually very surprised. Like he
Hmm.
says, like, why can't I ask the question? I should
Yeah,
be able to ask a question and continue to ask my questions when I don't understand something.
right. And also, why would it be a big deal if the other manager could easily say, like, oh, this is how we found the results?
Right, exactly.
Like, it
But
doesn't seem like it would be such a, you know, threatening
difficult, yeah,
question.
difficult question to ask, exactly. But somehow the manager and the CEO, the manager who was presenting, got obviously triggered because he didn't respond, and
Hmm.
then the CEO got triggered, um,
Hmm.
and he didn't say anything at the meeting. So the whole meeting was kind of like a awkward silence, and then they move on to the next topic.
Okay.
So here, an example of emotional safety, right? There's no emotional safety.
Because because the problem wasn't addressed right away, or because there was awkward silence, or why?
Yeah, awkward silence. People could not say, I'm not sure. I need to come back to your question. Oh, this was a great question. Thank you for asking that question, acknowledging, right? So
Hmm.
the manager who asked the question, how did you get to these results, felt like he did something wrong. He did something wrong. He also felt, um, why couldn't he ask that question? What was wrong with that question?
Hmm.
So he felt like there was no acknowledgement of his desire because he cared about the company. So it makes sense that, like, from his side, from his point of view, he was completely confused. Like, why couldn't he ask a question? So when the CEO came to him to the kitchen and said, why did you ask that question? You should have known. He felt like it was like a punch in his stomach.
Hmm.
He was so scared. He was so shocked that he couldn't ask that question. For
Yeah.
the CEO, when he asked the question, for the CEO was also shocking that he asked that question in the first place. But the
Hmm.
CEO, because the CEO didn't really explain to him the impact it had on him, he just came to the manager and says, "Why did you ask that question?" Attacking him.
Instead of, okay, so this is a company that you've worked with before.
Yeah,
Yeah. So this is actually a good example because it's very common and it occurs a lot of times. It's almost like I think where people feel like they have to walk on eggshells
yes,
around the CEO or the managers or in the meetings. They have to be quiet. They
right,
can't
right. It's
share
very
what's
difficult.
going on with them, right?
Yes. And now
So,
miscommunication and misinterpretation happen often
yeah.
during
Hmm.
that during those moments. Mhm.
So when you say that there's no emotional safety, because in that moment, nobody was able to speak up in that entire, nobody that was present in that meeting was able to speak up about the awkward silence or the question that wasn't answered or the fact that the other manager even asked the question. So that is defining that there is not emotional safety.
Correct. Yes, correct. So this person, this manager took a risk and he
Hmm.
posed the question like, how did you get these results? Right.
Hmm.
And everybody is stumped. It's like, wow. So nobody, it's almost like,
Well, maybe they were like, yeah, we want to know, how did you get the results?
yeah, exactly, maybe, exactly. But nobody
But
says,
maybe they couldn't
nobody.
answer because maybe they got him off Chat GPT. Maybe there was no results to begin with.
Well, the point is, in the moment, like just think about it. If people can't even respond to that question or can say, that is a great question, I have no idea, or just think about the emotional state that people go into, right? I mean, why people don't even acknowledge that that was a good question because they are overwhelmed in that moment. There's fear sets in, there's awkwardness. People start to feel maybe embarrassed or ashamed somehow, right? All of those emotions come up, and people, if they can't even respond, that means they don't feel safe with the CEO in the meeting or with other managers in the meeting.
Yes.
Even the
Yes.
fact that CEO came to this guy and he said, "Why did you ask that question? What is he doing? He's instilling fear. You shouldn't be asking that
Mhm.
question. You should have known." He's like continuing the negative
Right.
cycle.
Well, but if we like if we rewind a little bit back, there must be some um like the feeling that the manager who asked the question, he's probably feeling like he needs some sort of maybe there's some disconnection already with him and the other manager for him to question or doubt like, oh, well, where'd you get this research or this statistics from, or the
It could
results
be,
from.
yes.
And then the manager who was supposed to respond or was being asked that question, like if we rewind it even back further, he's probably had some interactions with this other manager that haven't been so positive because it's almost like that manager was like calling him out in front of everybody at the meeting, right?
It could be.
And then he couldn't really answer, so it's not just the emotional unsafety that's occurring with the CEO and the manager that asked the question, but it's also emotional unsafety that's occurring between the two colleagues that are working in the same level managers. And but I guess this has the ripple effect, and this is, like we saw in the movie in the video about the ripple effect. You have the CEO that's not creating emotional safety. Excuse me. That then is, you know, it's coming down on the other managers, and this is how it's showing up. So
Exactly.
I think it's really important to clarify. And for those of you who are regularly listening to our podcast, you know more about the emotional process than if you're new to this, but it is very important to clarify that in the first step of understanding the emotionally connected process in the workplace, it's self-awareness, and we don't oftentimes see the effects, of our emotions and not being able to express the emotions and how that plays a role in creating emotional unsafety. So you may be the CEO of this company and think, I'm just responding out of what I normally do, not even thinking that it's causing this emotional unsafety. So to just recap, because these are just some instances. I feel like there's a lot of different signs that could lead to show you that if you are working in a company where you do feel emotionally unsafe, or maybe you don't know if you feel emotionally unsafe, these are some of the signs to look for. Can people speak openly and freely at meetings? Can questions be asked? at meetings? Can conversations be had without people feeling like they have to walk on eggshells? Can you share some vulnerable experiences and feelings that you may be having or some struggles that you're going through at your work? Those, if all those answers are no to those questions, this is a sign that you need the new book that Dr. Lola is coming out with called we're going to talk more about after we finish this story about the situation because it really does teach the way that you can transform your culture and your organization to create this emotionally safe environment. So continue. So we're recognizing that the pattern here, that there's a cycle, there's several cycles, there's different layers to the cycles. The CEO has a cycle with the manager has a cycle with the other managers. And actually all the people involved in the meeting have cycles because nobody was speaking up. Nobody said anything. Okay. So how many times, because you worked in corporate for gosh, 30 plus years, how many times have you seen in your personal experience this same exact situation
A lot of
in
times,
meetings?
many times, many times. And
It's
I
so
like what you're
common.
saying. It's so self-awareness because self-awareness, I think, is built on other people's sharing their experiences with you. Because otherwise, how will you be self-aware and increase your self-awareness if you don't know how you impact other people? So,
Right.
so what happened in these conversation when I was doing a reconnection session with the manager and the CEO was actually very surprised. He's like, he had no idea that
Yes.
this is how it's
Yes.
impacting the
Mm,
manager. The fact that he came and he asked a question, why did you ask this question? And he's not even paying attention to his facial expression or to the tone of voice, plus the environment where they were talking. Because the manager saying, when the CEO came up to me and says, why did you ask that question? There were other people in the coffee room. And so he
mhm.
felt embarrassed that the CEO
Yeah.
was asking him. And that maybe they cannot hear the whole conversation, but they could hear some conversation, like something is going on. So he started to feel like the CEO is disappointed in him. So somehow he did something wrong. He's now
Hmm.
he's scared for his job, like, oh my gosh, I'm losing the connection. But what the CEO is doing actually is trying to repair the connection with the manager, because at the moment when the manager asked the question, where did you get these results? The CEO got triggered and he got
Right.
disconnected from the manager, and he doesn't want to be disconnected from the manager because the manager is very important to him. So
Yeah.
through the reconnection process, they were able to slow things down so they can increase their self-awareness. So they
This,
can so
yeah. This,
also, go ahead.
no, it's okay. Continue. Continue.
So they can also understand each other's raw spots and emotions and correct the message, because in that moment, when the manager asked, where did you hear that? The CEO got triggered, and suddenly the CEO felt like he did not do a good job as a CEO to prepare the other manager to respond in the right way or to respond to this question. So the CEO felt inadequate that
Hmm.
moment when the manager asked, where did you get this question, these results? And then the manager shared with the CEO how he got so scared that the CEO asked him that question like he did something wrong, and he started to defend himself.
And this is a common cycle. Aside from like the issues that we see in the boardroom or in a meeting that happen that are very, very common, the attack defend cycle is very common. It's just typically what people do when they're triggered. I mean, the pursuer will attack more often than withdrawer. But
Right. The CEO was a withdrawer in this case, and the manager was a pursuer.
but the CEO came to the manager.
Yeah, and reached out and said, but the way he did it, right? He said, he didn't say, like, tell me more. What happened to you? Right? He said, why did you ask that question?
Mm-hmm.
Should have known.
Right, right. So these are all signs that there's emotional unsafety. And so you mentioned doing what's called a reconnection session. And this is actually one of the steps in the process that is outlined in the new book that's coming. And why don't you tell us about your book? And then we'll kind of circle back to talk about the reconnection session and how you were able to help them.
Well, the book is called Evolve: How Leaders Can Lead with Emotional Safety and Really Achieve Transformational Results. And I think that the book provides key ideas and ideas for action and insights and stories on how to increase those capabilities on creating emotional safety. So I'm very excited about it. And it's really tied to the team emotional safety assessment that we created, where people can take this assessment, and they can have a report on their capabilities of how they perceive emotional safety with their team members and with their manager. So it then you can use that report, and then with the book, you will have lots of ideas for action, how to actually increase your effectiveness as a leader or as a team member to create more emotional safety within your work environment.
And I love that because, well, first of all, I love taking quizzes, and tests and assessments. But I think that that's really great because you don't have to go back to your work and just guess and see if there's emotional unsafety. You probably have thought about it while you're listening to this podcast and while we're sharing this kind of conflict that commonly occurs in meetings and in the workplace. And you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I've been there, I've done that. We don't have to take a guess. You don't have to go back to your work and guess and see and look if there's emotional unsafety. You can just easily take this assessment to find out if there is, in fact, emotionally safe environment at the workplace. And they can find this quiz where? On emcleaders.com.
Yes, yes, it's emcleaders.com/Tessa, Tesa,
TSA.
Tesa, Tessa,
Perfect.
Tessa, right?
So emcleaders.com/Tessa, Tesa. And with the assessment, this is what's so amazing about this book that's coming. It's going to give you a guide, the exact and only guide you need to create this emotionally safe environment in the workplace. So, Dr. Lola, you said capabilities, and I like that word. I think of skills because I think in every workplace, so many people before they actually hire, before they hire someone to work, someone that's qualified, they look for specific skills. And this is such a huge beneficial skill to have. So even if you're not currently working, or you're not currently in an environment, in a corporate environment, a workplace, or a team, and you want to add this skill to your resume because it's going to offer so much, I would say, like it's
Possibilities.
and quality, it's like a
Yeah,
really good
quality.
quality skill. Like it adds so much value to you as a worker, and part of a team. It's a great opportunity to do that too. So you don't necessarily have to be in a team to take this assessment. You can also take this assessment to find out how to learn and get the book to find out how to learn and gain this skill to further your development in emotional safety and creating emotional safety in the workplace.
Yes, and also I think it's increases the knowledge base for people to understand why we need emotional safety, how does it impact our collaboration and performance, and the most important thing, we provide a formula for optimal
Mhm.
success in the book. And and the formula really starts with what you started with, self-awareness. It is
Yeah.
awareness when you have to recognize that there's a disconnection happened. So the formula for optimal success is that awareness when the disconnection happens times expertise in repairing the connection equals optimal success.
Oh, I love this. It's a formula too. We have We have a test, an assessment, a quiz, plus we have a scientific formula. Wait, tell me again. Let me think really quick. I got to write this down on my whiteboard so I could read it every time I wake up in the morning. What is the
The
formula?
formula is awareness,
Okay.
right? Awareness that the disconnection happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Plus,
Multiplied
multiply. Okay,
by
multiply.
expertise of your skill in repairing that connection.
Okay, equals
Okay.
optimal
Equals
success
optimal success. Why? The reason why is because we always want to decrease the amount of money. I mean, we want to decrease the amount of time.
and increase
No,
the
decrease the
money.
amount of time, right, and increase the amount of money, but decrease the amount of time between disconnection and connection. Why?
Yes.
Because when people are disconnected, they cannot think, they're not productive. They start wasting their time. They cannot be focused because the amygdala is hijacking the prefrontal cortex. So in that moment, we have to be attuned, we have to pay attention when people are disconnected, when we are disconnected, right? So
So
that's awareness.
we are crossing E equals MC squared off of our scientific formula and creating a new one called A times E equals OS.
Yes. Actually, that expertise happens by doing the emotional connection process with the reconnection form. Because the more
Yeah.
you do the reconnection form, the better you get in your expertise of recognizing all these elements that repair the connection.
It's amazing. I love it. Okay, so let's circle back to the conflict that occurred at this company.
Yes.
So you stepped in because this is a service aside from the book and the training and the TESA, the assessment test quiz magical thing and the formula. You also provide these you also provide, we can't cut this part out of the podcast. It's the best part. You also provide these sessions to help repair conflicts with these teams. But when they're doing the training, right? It's part of the training
Yeah, it's
program. Is
part of the
that
training.
correct?
And now we want to train internal trainers so they can teach the managers and the leaders and supervisors and all the team members so they can have this tool. But yes, this was several years ago. This not just currently, but this happened several years ago when I helped them to have this conversation and use the EMC process, the reconnection process, to talk about it. The first thing I wanted, to recognize is there's no bad guy. Like nobody did anything wrong. Not the CEO by asking question, not the manager by asking questions. So this is very important to recognize we're not doing the reconnection session to find some bad guy or to change behavior. We're trying to repair the underlying fear, which is we are disconnected, right? We want to repair the underlying, again, disconnection that happened.
I think it's like the root, right? The root is the missed emotional message, the
Yes.
missed emotional cues. That is like the root of the problem, as opposed to just like putting a band-aid. It's kind of like dealing with health issues, you know? You're not putting a band-aid, you're actually trying to understand like what is causing these issues to come up. So the root cause is that emotional miss, the missing each other on an emotional level. And so you had a reconnection session with them, which was like a Zoom meeting or like a
Yeah, it
in-person
was a Zoom
meeting.
meeting, exactly.
And then you went through your form, which if you guys don't know about this magical EMC reconnection form, I happen to have it right here. There's a practice journal now among the formula and all the other amazing things Dr. Lola has. You can get this form and the whole pad on emcleaders.com in the tools section. So this form, and then tell us how. So you start off by saying it's nobody's fault. Let's go through the disconnection and go through the form pretty much to create a reconnection.
Yes, exactly. And so what we really aiming for is we really creating these what we call bonding conversations where they can share their vulnerability of what happened to them. And as they share, they become more clear on the message, what they need to feel safe and connected. So the manager said, "This is how it made me feel. I felt like I did something wrong. You were like I was somehow my raw spot being disapproving and intimidation, right? Because it's a CEO. All of these created fears in me, and I started to worry. I started to worry that, oh my goodness, we're going to be disconnected, and oh my, we're not on the same page, and it's not okay to ask questions. Wow, I should have this fear of being afraid to ask questions." So when he had all these experiences to shared with the CEO, and asked for what he needed, the CEO was able to be there for him. He was able to say, "I want to reassure you, you didn't do anything wrong, and I care about you, and that you're important to me, and I get it. That was very difficult for you."
So I like that this form creates an environment for an emotionally safe experience. This is important because when we don't have like a step-by-step process, emotions get so overwhelming and conflicts can get so big and they can be so impactful in us in a negative way that it can be very difficult to put feelings, put words to the feelings that we are experiencing. This is why the form and the process formula works so well because you don't have to guess. You don't, in the midst of emotional distress, you don't have to reach for your prefrontal cortex, which is already hijacked when you're distressed, in order to identify and clearly express how you're feeling. Instead, you reach for this process and this reconnection form in order to guide you in an emotionally safe and bonding conversation. And this is really what your book Evolve is all about, correct?
Well, yes, exactly, exactly. And you are correct. This actually focuses on so much on emotional experience rather than content. The reason why people get off and become more in conflict because they focus on content. They trying to prove each other's wrong. They trying to defend their position. They trying to explain why they did this something. And when you get stuck in this content tube, as we speak, people really get more and more disconnected. But because the
Right.
form is so focused on the emotional experience, allowing people and allowing, like providing space for that emotional experience to be validated and to be heard, they start to feel more at peace. They start to feel calm. They start to feel heard and valued. And so both people and the CEO was able to share what happened to him in that meeting. He, like I said before, he started to share that I responded like this because I got so scared that people will look at me as inadequate. I'm an inadequate CEO because I did not prepare the presenter
Mm-hmm.
to answer these questions. So I felt like I did something wrong. It's something wrong with me.
Well, that's amazing. And that's wonderful that how effectively and rather quickly, this is where the time saving aspect comes in when using this reconnection form and this process, where conflicts can have a detrimental effect on employees and their performance at work, especially in the long term, that wastes a significant amount of time as opposed to taking the shorter amount of time to go through this type of process and using that reconnection form to reconnect on an emotional level and then have an environment that's thriving and then employee that is extremely productive and able to just be there to respond and attend to their tasks and to do their job to their optimal capacity, which is what your book teaches is how to create optimal success for
Yeah.
a lifelong journey. of greatness in your work, at your work, in your organization. So, well, this is amazing. It's so exciting, and which is such a big deal. You've published many books before, so this is just one. I feel every time I've seen your newer version of whatever amazingness that you're creating, it's like it just gets better and better and better. It just is evolved with
Yes,
the
it is.
process.
Actually, I like this book a lot because I like to-do lists. Can do
Checklist.
like checklists, right? I
I
really like
love
that.
that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that.
because we can learn so much about emotional intelligence and how important the emotions are and what neuroscience teaches us and the importance of rewiring the brain and how we're born to be bonded and connected. But the gold is in being able to take what we learn and apply it to our everyday life, and then even more significantly, apply it to conflicts and issues and situations that we're struggling with that we, can't work through ourselves. So that's why I like this to-do list book checklist process leadership guide because you can go through and actually implement the
Yes.
strategy, implement the process into every single day that you are working and building these really important and lifelong relationships at work.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited for your book to launch. I cannot wait to have it.
Thank
I
you.
mean, I'm going to use it and with my kids as well. The leadership guide. I'm going to tell them all before you turn 18, you must read this book so you can have the skills in this form. So thank you very much for
Thank
those who
you.
watched and listened to our podcast. My name is Polina, and this is the Leader in You podcast. For all of the information and all the tools and resources that we talk about here, you can go to emcleaders.com. You can sign up for our online training. We have our toolkit. We have so many just really amazing material that will support you to create a thriving environment at the workplace and to create securely attached relationships and bonds with your coworkers, with your colleagues, with your employees, with your board directors, with your organization. And we are here for you to support you in your process and your internal trainers.
For optimal success.
What's we've got to memorize this line. What is the line on your book?
How
Evolve.
how to lead with emotional safety and achieve transformational results.
Amazing. Thank you guys for
Thank
watching, and
you.
we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
Bye.
Polina. Bye. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's a joy to share these podcasts with you. Be sure to check out our previous podcasts and subscribe to join us at our next podcast of The Leader in You, brought to you by EMC Leaders, taking care of the teams you care about. Until then, be well and be focused on your relationships. We'll see you soon.